No, hold on, hold on. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Marshall W. Allworth Planetarium. My name is Jessica. I am the director and will also be your tour guide to the night sky tonight. We've also got two of our students who are working and helping tonight. Ben is in the back right now. You also met Braden, who is sitting in the gift shop. So yeah, for tonight we have a great show. Since it's the beginning of the month, we're doing our Exploring the Monthly Sky. We'll talk about what astronomical events are coming up this month and what you can find for yourself. And if at any time during the show you need to leave, you're welcome to do so. You'll just exit through the same door you came in. Just of course be careful because it does get dark in here. And if you have any questions throughout the show, feel free to ask. I can't always see hands, so you're welcome to just ask your question. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can always come up after the show and ask me questions as well. All right, well, with that, I'm gonna head to the back and we'll get started. All right. So we are starting out a little bit in the past. We are starting out with sunset, which happened much earlier, a couple hours earlier. If you are getting tired of these early sunsets, same. But we don't have too much longer to worry about them because we are coming up on the winter solstice on December 21st. That will mark the longest day of the year for us in the Northern Hemisphere, the longest night of the year, shortest day. And after that point, days will start getting longer once again, and we will start having later and later sunsets. So just a couple more weeks to bear with these, and then the light's going to start coming back. But for right now, right at sunset, there is already a couple of things that you can see. The most notable is going to be over in the east. You can make out just faintly the planet Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is incredibly bright, so it is going to be one of the first things that you see as the sun sets and it gets dark. So if you're seeing something really bright over in the east at sunset, you're looking at the planet Jupiter. And it will be hanging out in the night sky all night long. It's got a couple of other things that's with it, but they can't be seen quite yet. So we'll get to those once we get a little bit darker. Before that, let's go ahead and fast forward until we are good and dark. All right. So we don't have to go too late to start getting into our dark skies. Here we are, honestly, even just an hour ago. So why don't we go ahead and just jump ahead to right now. So we can see the sky as it would appear right now outside. Now, this is, of course, our view if we were outside of the city. While we're in the city, we have something called light pollution. That's lights from houses and street lights and cars. It bounces off the atmosphere and it makes the night sky brighter than it naturally would. And that drowns out a lot of things that we see in the night sky. But if you can get really not even that far away from Duluth, We're pretty fortunate. You don't have to get that far out of the city to get some really beautiful dark skies. Now we're going to start taking a look at some of the things that we can see in the sky. We're going to begin in the north. I think the north is a great place because a lot of the things I'm going to show you are up all the time, all year round. And so it's a really great place to start your kind of night sky tour and night sky knowledge because it's always going to be there and be a familiar starting point. But we will get started with these 7 bright stars that are kind of low on the north right now. This is, of course, the Big Dipper. We have the handle and the cup of the Dipper. Now, the Dipper itself is actually not a constellation. It's an asterism. So that means it's a smaller, more recognizable part of a larger constellation. In this case, our Big Dipper is the 7 brightest stars in the Greek constellation of Ursa Major, or the Big Bear. So the handle of the Dipper is the tail of the bear. The cup of the Dipper is part of the body, and then we add in some other stars to make the head and the legs of our Big Bear. Now, of course, since we have a Big Dipper and a Big Bear, it makes sense we must also have a Little Dipper and a Little Bear, because why call it big if there's not also a little version? So finding our Little Dipper can be a bit more difficult because the stars just aren't as bright. But there is a trick to it. What we want to do is take the front 2 stars in the cup of the handle. These are our pointer stars, because if we connect them and we follow that line, they point us to Polaris, or you might know it as the North Star. Polaris is the end of the handle of the Little Dipper. It does also have 7 stars, just like the Big Dipper. But if you struggle to see more than about 3 of them, that is completely normal. As I said, most of the stars are pretty dim, and you have to have really dark skies and really well dark adapted eyes to see all 7 of them. I've only seen all 7 stars in the Little Dipper maybe 3 times. And that's all been when I was far from Duluth. Most of them were up near the Boundary Waters. I don't think it was necessarily easier then. We might have just had less light pollution at that time, which made it easier. But the brightnesses of the stars haven't really changed that much over, a 10-year period. All right. Our Little Dipper is also our Little Bear. There's no extra stars here. The handle of the Dipper is the tail, and the cup of the Little Dipper is the body of the Little Bear. And you may notice that these bears look a little strange. I don't know about you, but I have never seen a bear with a long tail. And the common joke is, so these constellations were both from the ancient Greeks. So the joke is that clearly the Greeks had never seen a bear before in their life. But we have to give them a little bit more credit because they do actually have a story to explain these unusually long tails. And since this is a Greek story, it starts with Zeus. Zeus is the king of the Greek gods. He lives up on Mount Olympus with his wife Hera and all of the other gods and goddesses. And one day he comes down to Earth because he finds a village that's having a party and he decides to join them. And at this party, he met a woman named Callisto and they became really good friends. But Zeus's wife Hera did not like their friendship. So she decided to turn his new friend Callisto into a bear and brought Zeus back home to Mount Olympus. Well, what they didn't know at the time was Callisto had a son named Arcus. And after not seeing his mom for a while, he got worried and decided to go search for her. And in his search, he came across a giant bear, which started running towards him. He didn't know that this bear was his mom, so he pulled out his bow and arrow to defend himself. Thankfully, nothing bad happened because Zeus was back down on Earth, also looking for Callisto, and so he explained to Arcas what happened. And unfortunately, he could not turn Callisto back into a human, so he did what he thought was the next best thing. He turned Arcas into a bear. And he decided to put both of the bears up into the sky to keep them safe and together. And so to get them up into the night sky, he picked them up by their stubby little bear tails, spun them around, and flung them into the sky. And it's that process of being spun and flung by their tails that stretched them out. So our big bear is the mama bear Callisto, and the little bear is her son Arcas. And so that's the story of the bears and their unusually long tails. All right, I have two more constellations here in the north I want to show you. First up is a constellation that starts out right in between our two bears and kind of snakes his way across the sky. This is Draco the Dragon. We have our great dragon in the sky, and this time of year, he is kind of breathing fire down on the exit door, so just be careful when you leave later. And the last constellation here in the north I want to show you, we're going to need to look a little bit higher up, and you should see a W shape. Well, I guess it's an M this time of year. But that's W, or M, is the Greek constellation of the Queen Cassiopeia. And it can be a little bit difficult to see how you would turn an M into a queen. Generally, she's pictured as if she's sitting in her throne. And so we're seeing kind of the outline of that throne and her sitting there. And you may notice that she is right in the middle of this fuzzy band that stretches across the sky. That fuzzy band is our Milky Way galaxy, where we live. Our galaxy is filled with about 200 billion stars. They're mostly in the disk of the galaxy. Our galaxy is shaped like a disk or like a frisbee. And since most of the stars are there, we see that light concentrated in a band shape. And they don't look like individual pinpoints because they're just too far away for us to see that well. So all of the light, yes, that's all our galaxy. Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to turn us now over to the east. Because we do have a couple of planets to look at. As I said before, Jupiter pops out right as it's getting dark and is very bright in our night sky. It's going to be brighter than any of the stars that it's around. To just your eye, it will look like a bright star, but if you have a pair of binoculars or a small telescope and you're able to see it a little bit better, you can make out the stripes of the clouds of Jupiter. And sometimes you can even see the 4 largest moons around Jupiter, known as the Galilean moons. Now, on either side of Jupiter, we also have Uranus and Neptune. Now, these are planets that you cannot see with just your eye. You do have to have binoculars or telescope to be able to see them. But when you do look, you will notice that they have a very noticeable blue color to them. And so you'll be able to see that in your telescope. And we are right at kind of the best time to take a look at both Uranus and Neptune, because they're right after their closest approach to Earth. So they're going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit brighter, a little bit easier to see there. All right. And then lastly, up a little bit more to the south. So let me turn us a little bit more. We also have Saturn still hanging out in the night sky. Again, it's going to look brighter than the stars around it, but it will just look like a star to your eye. But again, with a pair of binoculars or a telescope, you will be able to make out the rings of Saturn, and you may even catch a glimpse at some of the larger moons around Saturn as well. Yeah. All right. So let me get those off for now. For our next set of objects, we're going to go a little bit later into the night. Because what I want to show you is what's known as our winter hexagon. And it's a set of 6 constellations that are very bright and easy to see in the winter sky. We need to go just a little bit later into the night. We'll stop about there to be able to see all 6 of them. But as we get later into winter, these will be up earlier and earlier in the night. All right, so looking for our winter hexagon, there may be a constellation you've already noticed. It's the one that we generally start with because it's the most well-known, and that is, of course, Orion the Hunter. We have his 3 belt stars with his sword, then his shoulders and knees, and then he's usually pictured either holding a club and a shield or a bow and arrows. This art is showing a club and shield, but I also see lots of art that include bow and arrow instead. So, it's kind of up to you what you would prefer Orion to have there. So in Orion, there are a couple of things to point out. First, the brightest star is this knee right here, is the star named Rigel. But the most interesting star, I would say, in Orion is his shoulder, which is named Betelgeuse. Now, you may notice that the star is red in color, and that is real. It's a red supergiant. So it's a star that's at the end of its life and is going to go supernova sometime soon. Now, soon in astronomical terms means very, very differently than soon in, our everyday talk. It could be tomorrow. It could be 5,000 years from now. We don't know. And we're not in any harm. We're not in any trouble. We're far enough away that when it does go supernova, we're going to be safe. But we are close enough that it's going to be incredibly bright. It's predicted that you would be able to see it even during the daytime. So personally, I hope it happens actually soon because I would like to see this happen. It does mean Orion's going to lose an arm, which kind of sucks for him. But, if you know some of the stories behind Orion, he's not really a great guy, so it's fine. Now, the last thing in Orion that I want to point out is part of his sword. You may notice that that middle star in his sword is a little fuzzy. That's because it's not a star. That is the Orion Nebula. So the Orion Nebula, let me get picture up a little bit, is a giant gas cloud that we call a star-forming region. So this means it is a giant cloud where stars are being born. We're talking hundreds to thousands of new stars being created here. It is one of my favorite winter objects to look at through a telescope because it's one of the few nebulae that I think actually look impressive in a telescope. Most don't look as nice as, say, like the Hubble pictures, because those are really long exposure, colors are exaggerated, they're meant to look spectacular, but they don't always look the same way when you look at it with your eye through a telescope. But I think the Orion Nebula is one that does actually look really cool. So it's right there in his sword, so you can always point even a pair of binoculars or a small telescope that way. All right, we have 5 more constellations for our winter hexagon, so let's get through them real quick. For our next one, we are going to take Orion's belt and follow it down to this bright star named Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star in Canis Major, which is the big dog, and that's why Sirius is known as the dog star. In this depiction, Sirius is the jewel on his collar. Now, there is another dog, because again, if we have one that's called the big dog, of course, we're also going to have a little dog. To find it, we're going to do some star hopping. We're going to jump up and to the left from Sirius to this bright star here named Procyon. Procyon is the brightest star in Canis Minor, the little dog, and let me just turn that on for you. Yeah, it's 2 stars. It's a line. That's the little dog. I guess he's a wiener dog, but yeah, there's our little dog. All right. Orion and his 2 hunting dogs are on the hunt for our next constellation. To find it, we are going to go back to Orion's belt and this time follow it up until we reach this V shape. And that V shape is the head of Taurus the bull. That red star you see there, named Aldebaran, is the angry red eye of the bull. The rest of the V is his snout. Then his horns come up this way, and then he's got some legs coming down this way. The rest of his body isn't really well defined. But then again, we also got a dog out of 2 stars. So I think this is pretty good. But if you look just past Taurus's face, you will notice a little group of stars. This is the Pleiades. Now, the Pleiades is often mistaken for the Little Dipper because it's little and kind of dipperish in shape. But this is actually a star cluster. It's also known as the 7 Sisters because generally people see about 7 stars within the cluster. There are actually closer to 100. But we can see the 7 brightest with just our eyes without the use of a telescope. You may also know another name for it. Does anyone drive a Subaru? Yeah? What's the logo? Stars. That's because the Japanese name for the Pleiades cluster is Subaru. So their logo is the star cluster. All right, we have 2 constellations left in our winter hexagon. For our next one, we are going to follow the horns of Taurus the bull until we find this kind of squished pentagon right here. This is Auriga the charioteer, or a guy named Auriga riding a chariot. And the brightest star is named Capella. Now, for our last constellation, we are going to look right in between Auriga and our little dog, and we will find two bright stars here named Castor and Pollux, and they are the heads of the Gemini twins. Castor there, you can see, has a long body and short little legs, and Pollux has a short body and long legs. And with that, we have our winter hexagon made up of our bright stars. All right. Now, before we finish up, there is one really awesome astronomical event coming up. And let me just get rid of some of these so that we can see stuff a little bit better. And we are going to take a look. We'll leave the Gemini twins on because we need them. And we are going to hop forward to the night of December 13th. The night of December 13th is going to be the peak of the Geminids meteor shower. Now, the Geminids meteor shower is named such because the meteors are going to appear to come from the area of sky of the Gemini twins. And it is one of the two major meteor showers of the year. The other one happens in the summer. The Geminids are going to peak, as I said, the night of the 13th, the night of December 13th. And during peak time, you can see upwards of 120 meteors per hour. It is a spectacular show. And this year, we do not have a moon to interfere with it. It is going to be a nice dark sky. You'll be able to see them all night long, but the peak is going to happen around 2 a.m. So if you can't stay up that late, at least go out once it gets dark and you'll be able to catch a lot of meteors. But if you want to see the absolute peak, that's going to be around 2 a.m. Is when you will need to go out. And you will see them shooting all through the sky. You don't necessarily have to be looking towards the east at the Gemini twins. They will fly all across the sky. And the Geminids are known for having really bright, colorful, long-lasting meteor streaks. So yeah, cross your fingers for a clear night because it should be a spectacular show. If you don't catch the Geminids, there is another meteor shower happening at the end of the month. Peaks on the 22nd, and that's the Ursids. But at peak, you're looking at 5 to 10 meteors per hour. So it's a more minor meteor shower. But if you can get out for the Geminids and the weather cooperates with us, it's a spectacular show there. Yes. Yeah, these meteor showers happen at roughly the same time every year. Meteor showers are generally the Earth passing through the debris cloud of a comet. But the Geminids are actually unique in it's the debris field from an asteroid, which is why the meteors are a little bit brighter because the pieces falling through our atmosphere are a little bit bigger than your typical meteor shower meteor. And that's one of the reasons it's kind of an exceptional show. All right, well, I'm going to hop us back to tonight and go forward through the night once more because there are a few more things to take a look at. As we go through this night. As we get later into the night, after our winter constellations are up, we are starting to see some spring constellations. Because there's always that little bit of hope, right? Winter will come to an end and spring will surface eventually. For tonight, The moon is coming up pretty early in the morning. It is in its waning crescent phase, so it's right at the end of its phase cycle. If you want to see a full moon, the next one isn't going to happen until December 26th. So you got to wait a couple weeks before the moon will be full again. But the last thing I want to point out is rising also right before sunrise is the planet Venus. So if you see something really bright over in the east right at sunrise, that is going to be the planet Venus. And it's going to be much brighter than all of the stars around it. And it will be visible, should be visible all month long. But with that, we are heading to sunrise. And back to our daytime. And with that, it's going to bring us to the end of our show. Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn these lights up. Are there any questions? No? All right, well, before you head out, there are a bunch of star charts in front of the TV at the main entrance. Please grab those. It has the constellations, the planets, all the things we talked about, information on the Geminids. If you do have any questions, feel free to come back here and I can answer them. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming and have a safe trip home and a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you.